What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with my best movies of 2023, my top 10 movies of 2023. I've been waiting until I saw just a few more things in early January before I wanted to do a top 10. I'll, of course, be posting my full long list of everything I saw on Letterboxd in a little bit longer. There's a few international releases still to come in February, but shit or get off the pot. Got to get the top 10 list out. Of course, my top 10 TV shows, my top 10 albums, my top 10 songs, and my top 10 K-pop songs are all already out now. YouTube.com/nostalgiapod. See the links below. Get those if you missed them. But movies, of course, had to talk about that. I've seen over 100 movies from 2023, so I feel like I have a pretty well-rounded take on this, and I'm going to get into that top 10. Every movie I'm going to talk about in my top 10, I've actually done a full review of earlier in the year, so I'm going to be a little bit briefer with the top 10, but of course, check those reviews out if you want more on any of those movies. And before we get into that, there's just a few highlights I think we got to talk about with the year in movies, because I think there's quite a lot of takeaways. Obviously, we have to start with Barbenheimer, right? Greta Gerwig's Barbie, the number one movie of the year, but even more, I think, surprising to me, Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer grossing over $950 million worldwide as a 3-hour R-rated biopic film. Just an absolute incredible phenomenon, I mean, like we had seen, meme-driven, internet-driven box office, smaller scale recently with, the Gentle Minions push for the Minions film, for example, Minions: The Rise of Gru. But Barbenheimer clearly exceeded any and all expectations, and I think kind of helped save the box office. Honestly, huge thing, right? Obviously, a lot has been said about Barbenheimer, but it's really should not be overlooked what that was accomplished. Obviously, the Hollywood strikes are a huge thing that happened in 2023, both the writers and the actors, and as a result, we'll be feeling that pain in the release calendar in 2024 as a lot of stuff got delayed. But honestly, as we know, it's been covered ad nauseum. Those strikes were certainly worthwhile for what they were able to push forward as the industry needed to refresh some things. Also, I think pretty undeniable was superhero fatigue at the box office in 2023. We certainly hit the nadir of the modern superhero film, comic book film apparatus. And, it was not just DC taking some L's, although they certainly did, as the box office really created for a lot of their movies, as we know that the reset to come was previously announced under James Gunn. As a result, you had Shazam 2 and Blue Beetle, and those two not even making $100 million domestic, and then The Flash really bombing, and Aquaman 2 barely escaping bomb status, to be honest, and being like kind of a modest film release, but paling in comparison to the former Aquaman film, right? And then on the Marvel front, I think creatively, a lot of people just lost some patience with that, and obviously this is a complicated issue, partially, I think, driven by the so-so product and volume of product on Disney Plus, right? Secret Invasion kind of felt like the creative nadir for Marvel. But on the big screen, you had the massive underperformance of the Marvels, which I actually thought wasn't too bad as a film, and Ant-Man the Wasp: Quantumania was a huge disappointment as well, critically and commercially, and of course now Jonathan Majors has been excised from the MCU. The only thing they can really hang their hat on is Guardians 3, which kind of feels like the product of a bygone era at Marvel anyway. So superhero fatigue. We'll be talking about it, and a lot of expectations for Deadpool 3 this upcoming July, to be brief. Also, I think similar things. It's kind of box office stuff, right? Like we had some of the biggest performances ever from Indian movies domestically with Pathan and Jawan and Animal. Like some of the best performances we've ever seen from Indian Bollywood and Tollywood releases in the U.S. happened in 2023. Really cool. Also, a bit more high profile would be the performance of some Japanese movies in the U.S. with Godzilla -1 and Studio Ghibli's The Boy and the Heron, where both movies, I think, really performed. I mean, Godzilla -1, I believe, is the second highest grossing Japanese movie in the U.S. ever. And that's behind the first Pokemon movie, which, had a big cultural imprint and obviously an excise box office as a result in the U.S. Really cool to see that. Um, Also, really, I think helpful for the box office. As December started to tail off there. And then similarly, Godzilla minus one again, as well as Gareth Edwards, the creator. Those are two movies that look absolutely amazing, and yet they have modest budgets. Reading about how little Godzilla minus one costs, I believe it's like 30-ish million, sub 30 million, and like how amazing that looks for a blockbuster movie, of production. And then creator, which costs a bit more than that, but that looks like a movie that should cost 300 million, not like 80 or whatever it is, and I think those two movies and the aesthetics of what they do and the scale they achieve, despite the budget being in check, hopefully that will be a sign of a kind of reality check for a lot of Hollywood filmmaking, right? Where the budgets have really ballooned. And part of that had been COVID, related, and some of that will come down. But largely, like, look at how expensive Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny was, or Mission Impossible. Again, some of these are COVID delay related, but also like Elemental, a movie that opened so low, but then legged out to make almost $500 million, but somehow had a $200 million budget. That should have been a way bigger hit than it ended up being due to that big budget. And then you contrast that with, again, Godzilla minus one and the creator looking so amazing while keeping that money in check. I hope that's a sign of things to come with blockbusters, as we know that, I think the desired success model has to come down. A big trend with this year was more confirmation that the China box office will not return to the levels it previously was at for Hollywood films. There's just less interest in Hollywood movies in China than there previously was, partially because China makes a lot more of their own movies and a lot more of their own blockbusters now. And, it's just not what it once was. And that's a big hit for superhero movies, but also other movies. So in general, I think costs, have to be appropriated. But again, Godzilla minus one and the creator show what can be achieved when you have a thoughtful, I think, production, and kind of related to the Marvel thing, but really tough year for Disney because again, like they just had a lot of bombs, a lot of blowups, right? Haunted Mansion, big loser. Unfortunately for me, I liked the movie, but Indiana Jones 5 didn't do too good. I mentioned the Marvel stuff, Elemental basically broke even through the grace of God, but Wish, didn't do too good either. So a lot of tough sledding ahead for Disney as well. But yeah, those are just some like top level things that kind of come to mind for me. So a lot of news, right? And looking ahead, I think the obvious stuff is just how well will the box office do with just less product in the marketplace, particularly in the first half of the year. We'll see. That's just getting going for us right now. But yeah, nonetheless, I think 2023 was honestly a fantastic movie year. Certainly the best movie year of the pandemic era. Significantly better than 2022, in my opinion. Just a really stacked year. A lot of bangers, a lot of A-list filmmakers, a lot of legends of filmmaking past, some older fellas coming back with some heaters for us. A lot of big name people, but a lot of newcomers as well. It was a big year, and making a top 10 was challenging. I like a large part of my list, and I'll do honorable mentions at the end. But had to narrow it down. So let's just get right into it with number 10, and I'll do 10 to 1 honorable mentions at the end. Again, check the links below, youtube.com/nostalgiapod for individual reviews of all these movies that I'm going to talk about. But yeah, let's get right into number 10, which is Yorgos Lanthimos' Poor Things. Yeah, Poor Things. I think this is a movie that's really hard to deny, where you have the return of Yorgos, but this is him, kind of doing his black comedy styling, but doing it in like this really lavish, like almost like fairy tale type setting, and reuniting with Emma Stone, another tremendous performance for her in a Yorgos movie following The Favorite, and just I think the journey that Stone's character Bella Baxter goes on in this movie, where you get all that Yorgos humor again, reuniting with Tony McNamara for the screenplay, and this movie's total blast. Definitely unique, has that Yorgos sensibility. There's some quirks to the movie, but I really liked it a lot. I think the reason I have it at 10 and not maybe a little bit higher, like this is obviously a popular, year-end movie for people, is I think the movie's just a hair long. I think there's some parts to it that drag or don't work as well as others, or maybe like you kind of get the point. But I thought the movie was really impressive. I think the way the movie also stands out for not being afraid to show sex and sexual interest on the part of its character, but also I think the politics and ownership of sex from like the female perspective. Like I thought that was all really impressive. And hats off to Stone for being an American movie star, not afraid to actually like show herself nude to quite a lot of degree. Like you just don't get that anymore. We're pretty conservative with sex in movies these days. So it gets a lot of points for me just for standing out and being different in that regard. But none of it ever feels exploitative to me. It's all actually like really like about the character's point of view, and like I think has like really important like thematic richness to what's going on there. The whole cast is pretty dynamite. Mark Ruffalo really shines as Duncan. Willem Dafoe reliably doing Willem Dafoe things. Rami Youssef, probably the big surprise of the movie, a big movie role for him as a TV actor. Christopher Abbott is really good at the end. That's a part that didn't work as well for me. Part of like the length issue for the movie. Like I didn't quite need all that aside with his character, but he's good. Um, yeah, like this is also a movie that probably has the most CGI. Poor thing, or Yorgos has ever had in one of his movies, and it's like good enough. Stuff with the boat doesn't look amazing per se, but I think thematically it's everything you kind of want in the Yorgos movie, and it's Emma Stone being a movie star, which is obviously always great because she's one of the best we have. So Poor Things for me, number 10. Number 9 for me is American Fiction, the directorial debut from Cord Jefferson. This movie was on my attention from the start because I had been a big fan of Cord Jefferson as a writer. He had really made a name for himself as one of the biggest and I think most prolific, writers in TV over the last, 10, 5 plus years. Obviously winning an Emmy for HBO's Watchmen. And then when you realize that his directorial debut is going to feature just an absolute stacked cast featuring Jeffrey Wright, Tracy Ellis Ross, Issa Rae, Sterling K. Brown, Keith David, etc. It's like, goddamn, let's go. And Cord, this is not like the most like lavish cinematic movie per se, but what it actually is I think a really well directed, really awesomely conceived first feature where this is both a intimate and like really touching and genuine family drama, but also at the same time being, I think, a really thought-provoking satire where it's really tackling, I think, race in a amusing, current, not pandering way. And the central premise of Jeffrey Wright's character Monk being this author who kind of resigns himself to writing a, quote, black book that, the white audience wants to read. And he's doing it as a joke, as a lark, because he hates that kind of thing, which he finds is pandering and demeaning. And then the book ends up becoming a huge success, and he has to deal with that and this persona he's created under a pseudonym. Like, I think all of that conceit is just kind of amazing. I thought the movie was really funny, really smart. And, some people have some issues with the screenplay where they feel like maybe it bites off a little bit too much by the end, or maybe doesn't resolve all the way. But I mean, for me, I thought all the satire, all the comment really worked. And then the big surprise is how well the dramatic family stuff really works. Like Sterling K. Brown, unsurprisingly, but another amazing performance from him in a supporting role. Yeah, I think it's like a really good time movie as well, but also like tackles, I think, some like really important stuff in a very humorous, like laugh out loud kind of way. So shout out American Fiction, and obviously shout out Cord Jefferson, who probably will have his pick of projects after this movie. Number 8 for me is The Iron Claw from Sean Durkin, the wrestling drama story about the Von Erich wrestling family. Man, I mean, this is a tough watch for sure. It's a tearjerker. It is a sad, difficult time overall. But man, I thought this was so good. I thought the performances were amazing. I thought all the dramatic tensions and the like difficult beats of the plot really land. And like it's a punishing movie, but man, like to me, like I thought it was really moving, really effective. Zac Efron as Kevin Von Erich, the one Von Erich family wrestler who survives, this family's plight. The best thing Efron's ever done, without question. and he's someone I've liked in comedic roles before. Shout out Neighbors, but goddamn, he is really tremendous. In a dramatic role, handling a lot as Kevin Von Erich almost becomes subsumed by this belief that his family is cursed, and that's why his brothers keep dying. You know, those brothers though like make a big impression despite being supporting roles. Jeremy Allen White does a great job as Carrie Von Erich. You have Harris Dickinson as well. I thought like just the three of them together, it was kind of lights out. And Holt McCallany is pitch perfect as Fritz Von Erich, the family patriarch, who is also I think on the short list of dipshit movie dads. Like it just really turned up well. Maura Tierney as the mom from a completely different type of performance and angle, also really good. Like, I mean, I think the movie, like, as someone who didn't know really anything about the Von Erich story and not even a wrestling fan, I think the movie does a really good job of welcoming in non-wrestling viewers. And there's a really, I think, really wise, well-written scene between Lily James and Efron at the diner where they explain wrestling to the common man. But the sports stuff itself, when you're seeing the wrestling happen, it looks great. It looks very convincing. The athleticism is certainly there from these guys who all got super fucking ripped for this movie. But the dramatic stuff really lands. And I think the ending, the like dream state, heaven-esque ending, I think that actually pays off well because the movie earns that sort of thing. So yeah, shout out the Iron Claw, which kind of became a bit of a sleeper-ish hit for A24. I think kind of exceeded box office expectations, which is great to see. It sounds like this movie is not going to be in the awards conversation to a strong degree, which has been unfortunate. But overall, I think this is a movie that will kind of last because it's really, I think this is really affecting and really captivating in everything about it. So shout out the Iron Claw. Number 7 for me is Ferrari for Michael Mann. Michael Mann's first movie since 2015. Michael Mann, the first of 3 80-plus-year-old directors on my list, funny enough. Spoilers / hint for movies to come. But yeah, this is a movie that unfortunately did not perform well at the box office, which to me it is a shame because I think Ferrari is a absolute blast, to be honest. It's absolutely a Michael Mann movie. You know what you're getting with this. It is about a genius, troubled male figure and why his genius, troubles him and holds him down. In this case, Enzo Ferrari, played to me brilliantly by Adam Driver. Is the Italian accent a bit uneven? Sure. But to me, Driver really imbues the presence and stature that Enzo had to carry at this time where this movie takes place, which is at a very critical time for the company of Ferrari as they basically race for their right to continue to exist and be financially independent, against rival Maserati as rival Fiat plots the, takeover attempt. And the racing to me is, I think, really well done. It's very coherent. It rips, like the racing stuff rips to me. I think it looks great, whether that's the test drive scene early in the movie or the actual Milia, whatever it's called, like the cross country rally-ish race that they do as the big set piece. But also I think the dramatic stuff, which is of course Enzo's very complicated family life between his pseudo-estranged wife, played brilliantly by Penelope Cruz, like just imbues so much passion in that role. She's great. Unsurprising, of course. And then his Enzo's mistress and the mother of one of his kid, played by Shailene Woodley, which was, still kind of like a bit of a perplexing casting choice, to be honest. But ultimately, I think it works. Like she's committed to the film, and I think the movie does a really good job of handling that family turmoil and that high stakes tension that the Ferrari business is going under. Like I think all that really works really well. And yeah, I mean, I think the movie like also is again captivating in drama. It's both like the sports movie stuff also like really I think propels the film. And when you see some death and tragedy happen on the racetrack, that is I think done in like a really visceral manner. Like the Michael Mann chops like really like present themselves in that moment. But yeah, overall, I mean, I thought Ferrari, really impressed me, and this is the kind of stuff I'd love to see from Adam Driver. It's like a movie star role from him. I think he absolutely smashed it, and hopefully Michael Mann doesn't have any issues financing Heat 2, following Ferrari's unfortunate box office performance as a money loser. But we'll see. But yeah, shout out Ferrari, shout out Man, shout out Driver, shout out Cruise. Like just a blast. It's everything I wanted the movie to be. Number 6 for me is Anatomy of a Fall from Justine Triet. This is the French film that has a fair amount of English in it as well, but French film that really kind of, I think, took over a lot of the film world by storm, and somehow is not going to be up for Best International Feature Film because France chose a different movie, but seemingly is going to get in that Best Picture mix anyway, and I think for great reason. This is a courtroom drama movie unlike anything you've ever seen. I think a big part of that is that it's set in like the courtroom system of France. So like, as an American viewer, the how the rhythms of how trials work in France is kind of illuminating. As a result, the prosecutor character gets to really stand up. But seemingly, a really simple conceit of this woman finds that her husband fell out of the second story window of their home and died, and then she finds herself as the chief suspect and has to defend her innocence and meanwhile shepherd her or protect her young son from hearing all this testimony, or at least that's what she wants to do. And I mean, this was, I think, a really, like, there's so much tension to this movie, but also so much rhythm to it, where even though it's, for a big part of it, just a hardcore, straight down the middle courtroom proceeding, there's just so much, like, amazing touches to it. Sandra Huller as the lead role, just absolutely incredible in the movie. Like, she has such charisma. And the big set piece with the movie is when we hear an audio recording played in court of this verbal turned physical altercation argument that Sandra had with her now dead husband, Samuel. And we see the movie, the movies take us into that scene and put us there, and we watch it unfold while the courtroom's listening to it. That's like one of the best scenes of the year, I would say. And overall, I think just it's a very tight screenplay, and what happens with the young son towards the end, I think, is a really like cool twist. But ultimately, I just thought it was like really brilliantly written and how it presents the conflict and the defense versus the prosecution in the court, and what it means to be a murderer versus what it means to be a bad spouse and things of that nature. Like, there's a lot to chew on and think about with the movie beyond whether you think Sandra actually killed her husband or not, but also like beyond that, like other ethical things. There's like a lot to chew on with the movie. Big surprise for me, but I think it's a really rewarding watch for sure. Like, it's one of those like can't look away type movies once it gets going. So shout out Anatomy of a Fall. Number 5 for me is The Zone of Interest from Jonathan Glazer, his first film in 10 years. This is the second A24 movie on my list. And yeah, this movie, man, it's hard not to marvel at the incredible, impeccable craft to it, and also how unique that craft and conception is of this movie, where we spend time with the family of Rudolf Haas, the commandant of Auschwitz concentration camp during the, heyday of the Holocaust, during World War II. And the simple conceit of spending time with that family, the family of the overseer of the murdering and extermination of thousands of Jews at this one place. And yet, we only ever see the Haas family villa and yard and home. We never see Auschwitz itself, even though the house that the Haas family lives in literally shares a wall with the border of the camp. We're right there. We hear all the things happening in the camp: gunshots, yelling, screams, kerfluffles, etc. We see smoke plumes rising up from the crematoriums. We see all that. We hear all that. Yet we never see it. And like that simple choice makes for, I think, one of the most unsettling, psychologically challenging movies I've seen in a very long time. And yet it's also just expertly done. I think the choice to film it in a certain way too, where you have all these fixed cameras throughout the house, so as a result the focus levels, the zoom levels never change. There's no pans or anything, and you feel like you're just kind of spying on the family as they go about their lives, and it's just the pure distillation of the banality of evil and what it means to be complicit in heinous acts, and also what it might mean when you're a younger person. Obviously, the Haas family had 5 kids that we get to know a little bit in this film, and seeing how they are uh, in connection to, or lack thereof, to what's going on. Like, I think there's so much to process when you watch this movie, but I think it's really done to brilliant effect, to be honest. And it's kind of like the anti Schindler's List, where that movie showed you everything about the horror, whereas the Zone of Interest shows you nothing visually. You only can hear it. And in a sense, maybe that's even more horrifying, you know, to be so close to it, literally, and yet not see it. And Sandra Huller, second performance on my list, where she plays Hedwig, the wife of Rudolf Haas, and I mean, another good performance from her as this really, you know, horrible person. Like watching her kind of offhandedly like joke about the clothes she gets to pick out taken from the Jewish female prisoners. Like, yeah, there's I think a lot to this, and the craft really impresses me. The conception of it really impresses me, but also just the fact that you can make, I think, something so new and rich in the field of World War II cinema, Holocaust cinema specifically. It's certainly a wide berth. We've seen a lot with that, but this, I think, really kind of like instantly like grabs you, and it's like, no, this is unlike anything you've ever seen. So, Zone of Interest, number 5 for me. Up there with the best movies of the year. I couldn't really make myself put it any higher, just because it's not a movie you ever want to see again. Of course, that's the point. Number 4 for me is The Boy and the Heron from Studio Ghibli, the second film from an 80-plus-year-old director, in this case Hayao Miyazaki, joining Michael Mann on my list. Also, Hayao's first film in 10 years, since The Wind Rises, his ostensible farewell film at the time. 10-year wait, just like Jonathan Glazer on the list as well. Yeah, The Boy and the Heron, man, I had quite the Ghibli journey in 2023, where I ranked and reviewed all the Ghibli movies in the lead up to The Boy and the Heron. Of course, check that out if you missed it. That was a huge labor of love. Really loved doing that, but that took a lot of time, right? I sat with all the Ghibli movies, including the ones Hayao didn't make. And as a result, the Studio Ghibli trademarks, but also the thematic touchstones that make a Miyazaki movie specifically, was pretty fresh on my mind. So going into The Boy and the Heron, when I finally got to see it, and I was lucky enough to see it a bit early at a film festival, this movie immediately impressed me, because this is something that's so referential to the works of Hayao Miyazaki's past. And as a result, it is not a good movie to go into if you're not a fan, or at least familiar with that past work. Because a lot of those reference points, a lot of those touchstones, they're just not going to register for you necessarily. But for me, this is a movie that I think I've still only seen it once, and I saw it in the Japanese language with the subtitles. I never got to see the English dub. Shout out my guy Robert Pattinson. I should have seen that. Never got to it. It would be fun to contrast. Nonetheless, I think it's a movie that really kind of washes over you with all its influence and how referential it is to Hayao's work. And then on top of that, why that becomes very meta, right? As this is like the new Hayao ostensible farewell film, even though it's the comeback film. The guy's very old. And the characters in the movie, and like where you place like Miyazaki, right? Where the titular boy is obviously yet another stand-in for Hayao, running away to the countryside from urban Japan during the firebombing of World War II, right? It's pretty familiar. But I think the fantastical stuff, like once we really get into like the new dimension, like it really sings, and I think that the parakeet army guys, some of the best humor ever in Ghibli, to be honest. I thought that was some like a laugh out loud shit, honestly. Yeah, like I think like there's like so much to parse with it, but like I just really like I can appreciate like what it ended up being, which I think is a perfectly good standalone movie. But then if you understand all the references and the remixing of past Ghibli beats, to me it was like just a big celebration. But also one of his murkiest and grayest, thematic movies yet. And like I was just really kind of blown away by everything the movie has going on with it. And I really hope Hayao sticks to his word about wanting to make something else. Again, we'll take anything. But if this is his last movie, I mean, it's quite the swan song because I think it's just so rich. There's so much going on, but in like the best way. So shout out The Boy and the Heron, aka How Do You Live in Japan. Number 3 for me is Killers of the Flower Moon from Martin Scorsese. Of course, Marty, the third 80-plus-year-old director on my list. Man, Killers of the Flower Moon, this movie's just like a masterpiece, like in all respects. A lot's been made of its like epic length, but movie is a stone cold epic. Like everything about the movie just knocks you out. The production values, the lavishness of that, the I think the expansiveness of its plot. Like I was absolutely blown away as soon as I saw it, and the big winner of the movie is of course Lily Gladstone, who is like the true hero of the movie, despite the fact that she is a bit sidelined through a big part of it. But I mean, she's tremendous in the movie. Getting to see Leonardo DiCaprio kind of play, play dumb again, play a unfavorable character. It's always fun when he does that. Another great De Niro performance, continuing his legacy with Scorsese over the decades. Really can't understate it. Like he's great as the chief villain here, whereas Leo's more the pawn. Um, this is a movie that I think tackles a really important piece of history, in terms of what happened to the Osage nation as all these murders happened, as basically the white people tried to steal their oil fortune. Like it's a difficult watch. There's a lot of, I think, a lot of violence you're seeing, right? But it's handling, I think, really important stuff as a result. And the movie also has, I think, some of the most beautiful stuff I've ever seen. Like I think the moment where Lily Gladstone's character, her mother, passes on, and dies, uh, and we see her meeting some emissaries from the afterlife, basically, and they have like, face paint on, like traditional wear and stuff, and the happiness of that scene as the mom is happy to go on to the next life. Like that's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And that's also, definitely one of the best scenes of the year, best movie scenes. Like in a movie that's so long, right? Like that, like brief, 1 minute scene really stuck with me. And yeah, I mean, any kind of epic Western, like to this degree, like the craft is like impeccable. The acting is fantastic across the board. Sturgill Simpson, honestly, really nice in a supporting role. Shout out him. Plemons, when he finally shows up and starts to do Plemons things, you're just like, hell fucking yeah, like let's go. I mean, we know Marty's a master, but like this is, on one hand, like one of his most impressive movies he's ever made, just from the sheer scale of it, you know. And I think everything really lands. The beats, the good beats, the bad beats. Again, it's a tough time at times, but it's just a master doing what he's always done, which is knock things out of the park from time to time. And to me, it's like a stone cold classic from him already. So shout out Killers of the Flower Moon. Number 2 for me is Past Lives, the third A24 movie on my list, the feature film debut from Celine Song, starring Greta Lee. Number 2 for me, this movie absolutely rocked me, knocked me off my feet when I saw it back in June. And I'm so happy that it seemingly is going to be a Best Picture nominee because it's so justly earned. And I did a very long review about this movie, when it came out, 6 months ago. So check that out. But man, like to me, like this is a movie that really defies convention at every turn. Wherever you think something's going to go to a more familiar path, it doesn't go that. But for what it says about, I think, connection and the titular concept of past lives and what could have been or what could be to come, like the movie really nails that. And to me, like the ending, I was really like overcome. Like I was like incredibly moved by this movie. I think Greta Lee, um, absolutely dynamite in the lead role, really pulling for her to get nominated for Best Actress because I thought she was absolutely incredible in this movie. And then, this is a story about uh, a woman who immigrates from Korea to America, gets married, but then she meets a past, friend connection from Korea. She left when she was young, so it wasn't a romantic connection. She meets him and thinks about what her life could have been like if things didn't change, if she stayed in Korea, like Haesung, her past mate. And the way the ending works, where I think John Maguiro's character, which is Arthur, the husband, watching him, sit there in the bar with this long take as you see, uh, Greta Lee's character and Haesung really lock in and like stop kind of like letting him into the story, telling him what's going on because he doesn't speak Korean, and just kind of watching that. And as like Arthur clearly is like struggling with what's going on, but still trying to be respectful to his wife Nora, and like that is like really like palpable, and like I think the chemistry between all the actors is really incredible. But then like the absolute ending, where you have Nora basically walk Haesung like out to get his Uber to go home to fly back to Korea, right? And you just sit there for a while, and like the camera pans to the left for you, so you're going back in time effectively as Nora is thinking about her past, and they say their goodbyes, and then she's just like overwhelmed with emotion and praises Arthur, and it's like I think just like thematically, like the drama of what this movie says about relationships, like again, like I think the whole build up to everything into this like absolutely perfect ending, like really knocked me out. So again, I had a really long review about this one, so check that out. But number two for me, like quite easily. And the only reason this movie isn't number one is because a little movie called Oppenheimer happened. Yeah, so number one is Oppenheimer, a bit unsurprising, but it feels a bit fulfilling that my genuine number one favorite movie of the year for the second year in a row is going to win Best Picture at the Oscars. Of course, my number one movie last year was Everything Everywhere All at Once, and that won Best Picture. Oppenheimer seems like a goddamn lock this time. And to me, it's for good reason. I've been a Nolan fan, of course, one of our I think signature directing talents, but also someone specifically who's able to bring his uh, presence and talent to a blockbuster scale and really do things few people can. You know, in Oppenheimer's case, I talked about Barbenheimer before, but on Oppenheimer's case, he was able to captivate so many people with a biopic movie, a historical biopic movie. You know, and this is about people in rooms. And the fact that this movie has so much goddamn tension and build up and rhythm and tempo to it, like I think this really speaks to that script, but also the propulsiveness of Nolan's direction. In general, there's plenty of drama to this story about the Manhattan Project and the creation of the atomic bomb under J. Robert Oppenheimer, as played brilliantly by Cillian Murphy. And yet, like, the build up to the Trinity test, as the race against time and again, we know what's going to happen. We know the history. The tension is still there. The rhythm is still there. And when you actually see the Trinity test, it's like one of those like absolutely dynamite set pieces when you first see it for the first time, and the movie throughout is just littered with so many famous faces, so many characters, both big and small. So I think that is also a big element to it. Like it just feels like there's so much pedigree the entire time, you know. And I also was really into the third hour, which I know some people push up against at least a little bit, as we spend time with Oppenheimer getting dressed down as he's going to lose his security clearance. Jason Clarke doing Jason Clarke things, and conversely, you have Alden Ehrenreich's, congressional aide character kind of going a little bar for bar with Robert Downey Jr. Like I think to me, like kind of culminating in the build up with the Einstein scene where we close the loop on the beginning of a scene that we had seen in the beginning of the movie, which is of course Oppenheimer talking to Albert Einstein as Downey's character, Groves, pulls up to see what they're up to, and seeing what that conversation was like between Oppie and Einstein, at the end, sorry, Strauss is Downey, Groves is Damon's character. Like seeing like the continuation of that scene as the movie ends to me is really moving, and I think even though the movie's about Oppenheimer, right? So it doesn't show you like what happened to the Japanese, but to me it doesn't steer away from any of that by any means, to be honest. And I think just like the incredible craft and scale of the movie, the tension the movie has, the dynamite cast throughout, whether it's Emily Blunt, who's great in a kind of an unforgiving role, which is unfortunately a common trend with Nolan and female characters. I think she's still pretty great for what she is given to do. Same thing with Florence Pugh. Damon, very reliable in the movie. Downey, though, like this is the big role. Like Downey hasn't done really anything since he got to sit on those fat checks from Avengers Endgame and Marvel, right? But Downey, like reminding you instantly, like why he's one of our great movie stars, one of our great actors. Just absolutely chewing on the sceneries as Strauss, and someone like Josh Hartnett, in a smaller role, or Benny Safdie. Like there's just so much going on. A really small role from Casey Affleck, and yet, like, goddamn, is he menacing for those brief moments you spend with him? I think to me, it's the movie success of the year. Like I said in the beginning, like the fact that this movie made almost $1 billion as a 3-hour R-rated historical biopic movie. Like, how the fuck did that happen? And yeah, Nolan has a fan base. And yeah, Oppenheimer happened. But honestly, it happened because once people kept seeing it with the memes, people also told you it was fucking good, So shout out this. I'm so happy that Nolan's going to get that Best Director. It's nice that, because he's never gotten one. And he's one of the best directors. We've all known that. But it's cool he's going to get that dub. I think it's really well deserved. So Oppenheimer's my number one. As soon as I saw it, I was like, wow, I'm knocking past Lives off the top spot. But couldn't deny this movie. So that's my top 10. I'll recap it and then go into the honorable mention. So number 10 was Poor Things. Number 9, American Fiction. Number 8, The Iron Claw. Number 7, Ferrari. Number 6, Anatomy of a Fall. Number 5, The Zone of Interest. Number 4, The Boy and the Heron. Number 3, Killers of the Flower Moon. Number 2, Past Lives. Number 1, Oppenheimer. Movies that just missed the cut. So my 11 through 15, we had 11 was Maestro by Bradley Cooper. 12 was The Holdovers from Alexander Payne. 13 was All of Us Strangers. 14, How to Blow Up a Pipeline. And number 15, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I also want to shout out Coriolis Monster, David Fincher's The Killer, Saltburn. I'm pro Saltburn. I like Saltburn. I know that's a polarizing movie. Shout out Saltburn. Barbie as well. I mean, that movie was way better than I ever thought it could have been, but don't doubt Greta Gerwig. That's our lesson. John Wick Chapter 4, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, Godzilla -1. We had some banger blockbusters, man. I mentioned The Creator before because of its visuals, and yeah, that's a movie with a kind of messy screenplay, but man, that movie looks so fucking good. Get my guy Gareth Edwards, a great screenwriter, and that guy can make a sci-fi classic. I have no doubt. I really enjoyed Priscilla. I really enjoyed Ridley's Napoleon. Fair Play, speaking of Alden Ehrenreich, I like that. Passages, my guy Franz Rogowski. I wasn't a super high May December, but I do appreciate it. I really liked Air. I really liked Creed 3. I watched a bunch of Chinese blockbusters last year, my favorite of which was Zhang Yimou's Full River Red, which grossed over $600 million in China. Fucking banger. Man, that movie is a historical blockbuster too. Really good. Sam Esmail's Leave the World Behind. I have anime on my list with Boy and the Heron, but also Makoto Shinkai's Suzume I thought was fantastic. So yeah, I saw over 100 movies. I'm going to post my full list of everything I saw on Letterboxd once I see a few more things. Namely, I want to see The Taste of Things from France, as well as Perfect Days from Japan, which are both opening early February in the US. So once I see those, I'll share my full Letterboxd list. But let me know, what did you think of my top 10? What did I leave out? What should I have had in my top 10? What's in yours? Let me know. And as you can tell, I love movies. I'll be reviewing more movies throughout the year, so make sure you subscribe. youtube.com/nostalgiapod. Check out my best music and my best TV top 10s if you missed them, and I'll see you next time.